Alright guys, so I'm underneath the JL right now, and I thought we'd take a look at some of the suspension components and what has changed over the years. First of all, you notice on the JL that the steering setup over here is a little different. They've got some molded cast pieces here that are a little bit heavier duty, and it looks like the tie rod and the drag link are huge on this thing. See how big those pieces are? They're much larger diameter than they used to be. And so it looks like they've actually beefed up certain parts of the suspension components under here. You can see how big the drag link is there. And of course the tie rod is just as big. Over here where the pitman arm is, look at that piece there. That pitman arm is solid. Very heavy duty piece compared to the older Jeeps that I'm used to. And of course you still got that Dana 30 axle, but the cool thing is, in the old days, some of these Jeep axles didn't even have drain plugs on them. You've got a nice drain plug there on the bottom of the axle, and obviously a steel fill plug instead of that rubber cap they used to put on the differential covers. So that's really cool, because if you go through any water crossings, it makes it really easy to swap out the fluid and get the water out of your differential. So I'm glad they put that on there. The rear axle has the nice little drain plug on the bottom of it too. The axle tubes on this Dana 30 look pretty big. I don't know how it's showing up on the camera, but to me, the suspension under the front of the JL looks like they've beefed it up quite a bit to me. I think they've made it a little more heavy duty than what it used to be. See if we can get up in and look at the sway bar. That's even a pretty nice looking piece now. Pretty heavy duty. Now the coils, they're a little bit different. See if I can get up in here. The coils are a little bit different, but overall they haven't changed much from the JK, just a little bit different. So that's why a lot of guys are saying that the spacer lifts will work on the JL. The spacer lifts that were out for the JK will work for the JL, because there's not a whole lot of difference there. Now if we go around here and look under the back, I wanted to show you where the you see the tag hanging off of it there. That's the breather tube coming off the front differential. You can see right up there where it right there is where it comes out of the differential, and they've got that running way up into the engine bay. So the breather tube on the front axle is in a really good spot. Love that. Of course your shocks and your links are all still easy to get to for modification or service. There's the oil pan. Piece of cake to do an oil change on these things. All kinds of room to work under here. And of course you got that top load oil filter, so I'm thinking a guy could do an oil change on one of these in about 10 minutes in the driveway. Absolute piece of cake. Now over there you can see the center axle disconnect system. They went back to that. I remember that from 20 to 30 years ago. They used to use that on the Jeeps, and a lot of the Dodge trucks used it also to kind of improve fuel economy just a little bit, but a lot of guys didn't like it. So I'm sure in the future there'll be some one-piece axle shafts that'll be out for options. I'm going to keep using this system until it does give me problems. No sense in swapping it up right now. So again, overall the front differential, the suspension, everything, it's same basic concept, but I think they've beefed it up just a little bit. Looks to be a little bit stronger system than what they've had before, and I do like the way they've got the drain plugs and the vent tubes on that rear differential. So let's go take a look at the rear. This is where most of the differences are, I think, on the JL. Get up under here. Most of the differences are going to be here in the rear on the JL. Of course, the shock mounting position is a little bit different, and the coil spring is different. If I can get up in here, the coil spring looks to be a little bit smaller diameter up on the top there. So that's why the spacer lifts won't work. The ones that were out for JK won't work on the JL, because the top of the spring is smaller. They've just molded those springs differently. So there is some difference there. gonna have to have completely different spacers for the JL. Again, this one's got the Dana 35, but it is the new Advantech model of the axle, so it's supposed to be a little stronger, a little heavier duty. Got a nice metal steel fill plug there instead of the cap, the rubber cap. Remember the rubber cap they used to have in here? Those things were notorious for leaking, and then you'd have differential fluid running down your cover. This one's actually got a proper fill plug, got a drain plug in there. The axle tubes are pretty big on this, a lot heavier duty than what they had on the older Jeeps. So I'm pretty happy with that. And of course you've got this track bar here, which is real heavy duty. The big difference I think is the coil springs, because that's going to obviously necessitate some re-engineering of the spacer lift kits and even the coil spring lift kits for these things. Here's the other thing, there's the drain of the, the breather tube. Instead of coming out of the differential housing, it comes off the tube over there. The axle tube's got the fitting on it, and then it goes up and is zip tied to the tub. So this one is not going to be 30 inches off the ground like the front one. I know Jeep lists the water fording depth at 30 inches on these, but that's not 30 inches off the ground. Maybe close, but it's not 30 inches off the ground. I thought that they would run that way up into maybe up into the tail light cavity or up in the fender or something, but looks like they've just zip tied it to the bottom of the tub here. So if you're going to be doing water crossings, you'll have to keep that in mind. Fuel tank's got a nice skid on it there, but overall it's looks like a pretty good setup back here, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of modifications for these later on down the line. Now the big thing as far as the exhaust, you know, the tubing looks pretty good coming down through here. You got that huge resonator in there, but overall the bends in the tubing look pretty good. Nothing restrictive or worrisome. But when you get back here to the rear axle, look how they've pinched that off. I mean, they've really pancaked that thing, and then it runs into the muffler at a 90-degree angle. So the exhaust is pretty restrictive back here. Kind of surprised they did that. Something that you'll have to keep in mind if you're going to go for performance on one of these things. But just wanted to give you a look at the changes on the JL. Looks like a pretty good platform to play with, guys. Alright, thanks for watching.